Hey guys, today is a little bit different of a video. I just wanted to take some time to talk to you guys about a few makeup mistakes, if you will, that some of us make that maybe aren't as flattering as we'd like them to be. I think that there are some makeup techniques, whether it's outdated or something that's maybe not proper for our face shape, that just isn't as flattering as we're hoping it could be. And a lot of times this is just that we just didn't know any better, or we're here on YouTube watching these videos, and sometimes studio lighting can really make makeup look so different than it does for all of us in our everyday wear. So I just want to say that if there's anything that I talk about that you love to do, keep on doing it, girl. It's just more personal preference, but for me as a beauty professional and someone who's been trained in makeup artistry, there are just a few things that I find that you can make little tweaks in your makeup routine to help you look and feel a little bit more youthful and less tired and just more flattering all around. So I just wanted to take a moment to throw that disclaimer out because it is just makeup. If there's something that you prefer to do, that's what it's all about. It's all about preferences, but these are just a few things that I find that we can tweak a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. So in today's video, I'll be taking half of my face and doing some of the techniques that I find aren't as flattering as we're hoping them to be, and then ways that you can tweak those techniques on the other side of my face. And at the end, we'll be able to compare side to side. I'm just going to tie my hair back. So the first thing that I think sometimes we skip, especially if you're someone that has more of an oily skin type, is skipping out on a moisturizer. And this is something that is so key to keeping your skin looking soft and supple. So you can definitely find a great moisturizer for any type of skin. It is really important to set yourself up for that, and it really will help your makeup lay more smoothly. So for today, what I want to do is just use a really lightweight moisturizing serum. So this is the Glow Recipe Watermelon Glow Pink Juice Moisturizer, and I'm just going to put that on half of my face, and we will leave the other half unmoisturized. So I do have my vitamin C serum on my skin. I did put that all over this morning when I woke up. So if you're curious about some of my skincare favorites, I did actually just post that in my Sephora VIB sale recommendations video. So you can feel free to check that out. That vitamin C is listed in there. And that is one thing that I will definitely say is like skincare is the first step to getting, better looking skin. If you guys are interested in me doing some skincare favorites and talking a little bit about that, let me know. I'd certainly be willing to share. I am 38, so I'm definitely, I guess I would say, as far as like people on the platform here on YouTube, I would say I'm probably on the higher end of the age scale. And I think that that's something that, that does change a little bit, some of the things that you do with your makeup and your skincare as we get a little bit older, just some of those little shifts. So maybe if you're around my age, you'll find some of these things valuable. So we have half of our skin moisturized, and this is a really lightweight moisturizing serum. I probably normally would prefer something even more moisturizing, but I just wanted to show you guys, especially for those of you that maybe feel like you have a more oily skin type, this moisturizer is just so light. It doesn't leave your skin feeling oily at all, and it does have just a slight tack to it. It's not sticky, but I find that just that little bit helps your makeup stay on as well. So then what we're going to go through and do is I'm going to go through. Now, I don't necessarily always prime the skin, so I'm just going to skip that for today, but I want to talk a little bit about foundation because I find that some women wear too dark of a foundation color, and I'm not sure if that's just because we're all wanting to look a little bit more tan, and so we think that maybe by going a little bit darker, that is like a little bit more flattering, but it really, we all know none of us want to be that person that's got like that line of demarcation, like they look like they're wearing a mask. But I really feel like it's sort of like they say that most women out there are wearing the wrong size bra. I do feel like most people are wearing the wrong color of foundation. So whether you're going through with the tinted moisturizer or something that's more like medium to full coverage, you really want to make sure to get a proper shade match. And it can be kind of difficult because like even on my skin, you can see here, I'm a little bit darker here, and then, a little lighter more towards the outside. And I would say you're almost always better off going a little bit lighter because you can always add in some warmth and a little bit more depth when you add in a bronzer or a contour, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's one thing that I would say you're going to want to make sure is to match your foundation shade. And like I said, you're almost safer on the lighter side than you are on the darker side. So I will be using a shade that's a bit too dark for me on this side, and then one that matches my skin tone right on this side. For my darker shade, I'm going to be using MAC Face and Body. I love this foundation. It's very lightweight, but I bought this, and of course I got the huge one after I'd gotten back from vacation, which is like the worst time to buy a foundation because you're so dark. So just to match, I would say like the coverage of this, I'm going to just use the Colourpop Pretty Fresh tinted moisturizer. So this is, you guys can see even just in this bottle, they're very different in shade, and so you'll be able to see at the end the difference that it makes. Now when I use this, you might not notice it quite as much as you would if you're using like a true like medium or full coverage foundation, but in all honesty I don't really have a lot of those because that's just not something that I prefer to use. You guys know, if you've watched any of my videos, I really prefer like a light finish. I usually tend to go through with a light weight all over and then something like a concealer with maybe a little bit more coverage for the rest of like where I need the coverage. All right, so I only have the MAC on, and you can see it almost looks like my lighting is even worse than it actually is. So I do, and this because it also is a little bit too warm for my skin right now, and that's another thing I really recommend looking into. If you can't assess your own skin tone, go into Sephora, get shade matched, and so that you can really find your true skin tone, and that will really help you pick all of your products in the future. So now we'll do the tinted moisturizer on the other side. And the other thing to remember is when you are matching your foundation, I think a lot of us like use the inside of our wrist or our hand, and I really highly recommend that you actually get matched to your face because all areas of our body are so different in color. So it's important to get matched to your face and your neck. Okay, so if you guys can see, like, definitely makes a difference. I do look more tan on this side, but I don't necessarily think that that's good because you can see how different my neck is, and this just blends like right in. So I will be able to add some depth in when I bronze and or contour in a little bit. Okay, now we'll move on to concealer. The big thing about concealer is where you're placing it and how much you're using. And I think that, I know I've been guilty of it a lot of times. You can definitely go overboard with concealer. When, you know, we first started this whole like Instagram, YouTube beauty thing, it's like everybody was putting concealer over most of their face. And I don't think that that's really necessary. Concealing is really just about putting it where you need it and not so much where you don't, because the more you layer products onto your face, the more texture you're gonna see and the more aged you're gonna look. It's just the case. So every time that you're adding another layer on, you're just giving yourself more opportunity to look a little less flattering. So what I'm going to do on this side is we're going to go through what you see a lot of people doing is this big triangle here, right? And then maybe we'll get the eyes, we go down the nose, and then put some here. Now this is going to look really crazy because of the color difference that we're doing, but that's the other thing is you don't want to go too light of a shade away from your, like, I like to go about half a shade to a shade lighter than what I usually use in my foundation color for my like highlighting concealer. And then for any blemish correction, then obviously you want to kind of like match up with what you've got going. But so you just, like, you see people do that big triangle, right? And then put a lot down the nose. Like a lot of times when I see people, they're like, oh, this foundation has pretty good coverage, and then they like go everywhere with the concealer too, and it's like, well, now you basically just put a thick foundation over your foundation. So now you've got 2 layers of a mask on your face basically. Okay, so I've zoomed you guys in so you can see a little bit better as we go through. This is the side with a lot of concealer on it. It actually like balanced out the foundation a little bit more, but we're gonna go through on the other side, and I am just going to place concealer where it's really needed. So that would be, for me especially, like right here in the inside where that darkness is. I do like to use it as a lid primer, but that for me is just, instead of like, you could use obviously a like actual lightened lid primer, and just a little down the nose, and maybe just a little right here because I get that darkness right through there. So that's probably like 1/4 of the amount that I used on the other side. And I'm just using my damp beauty sponge and just stippling that in. Now I will go a little bit heavier on my eyelid just because, like I said, I'm using that as like a base for all my eyeshadow. But if you have more like crepey lids, you want to be careful with that because you don't want a lot of creasing. So depending on the formulation of your concealer, that could go against you. So just a little bit. And then right here where I get a little dark. So this side is definitely much more even. I mean, it's better than it was without the concealer, but it's still concealed, but it's just not quite as heavy and makeup looking as it is on this side. And you'll see when we go through with powder to set, it's gonna get even worse because that extra concealer that's on this side of your face is going to glom onto that powder, or the powder is going to glom onto the extra concealer and get more cakey, whereas this, it'll just lay a little bit more smoothly. So speaking of powder, let's hop right into that. All right, so for powder today, I'm going to use the Too Faced Peach Perfect. So this I'm going to set and use a, I guess I would say, generous amount of powder. Now, powder is sort of like one of those things that it can be really good until you overdo it. Like, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. Powder is definitely one of those things that can help your longevity and make you look a little bit smoother, but when you use too much, it looks like too much. So I've definitely loaded up my face. I've put it all over. Usually I use a smaller, more detailed brush to do the under eye, and then maybe I just sweep a little bit over. So just grab a little bit of that. So I usually just dust a little bit over the eye to set that concealer down, especially when I'm going to go through with shadow afterwards. And I get oily like right along my nose, right along this area here. So that's usually what I set, and then I take a larger, fluffier brush. This one's dirty because I used it yesterday. Sorry, we're just going to go through again. And just almost like pull some of that other product down over the rest of my skin. I don't know if you'll even really be able to see that, but like you can definitely see a little bit more just texture, especially right around my eyes. So we have that powder on, and it's just going to be a little more than what's needed. Like this side, it looks set, but it still has like some natural youthful glow to it, and this just looks more flat, and it will definitely start to look more like worn throughout the day because that will all start to like cake up, crease. So in my opinion, this just looks like more youthful skin. That's just it. So a little bit of powder goes a long way, especially when it's in combination with just a little bit of concealer. So we'll zoom you guys out just a smidge and we'll keep going. I just went through and removed the concealer and everything from my eyebrows. Obviously I do have my eyebrows microbladed, but we're going to talk a little bit about brow shaping in just a minute. But I always feel weird when I've got like caked over eyebrows, so I just wanted to remove a little bit of that. But now we'll talk a little bit about blush, bronzer, and highlight. I'm gonna depending on how long this video ends up being, I may end up splitting it into 2 videos. So we might do face makeup and then lips and eyes in the second portion. So if it is split up, you guys will know because you won't get to see the full look and it'll be in the other half. So I just wanted to go over blush, bronzer, and highlight because I think that this is really a very key point because this is really how we sculpt and shape our face. So first, let's talk a little bit about contouring. So contouring is meant to give you more shadows and more shape to your face. So what you are meant to do is create those shadows in the places that you need them. And I think that most of us just all do the same technique, even though we all have different face shapes. So the ideal face shape is going to be an oval shape. So we're all contouring and sculpting our face to try to get closer to that oval face. Now that means if you have, most people know about like the 3 of contouring or like bronzing when you're looking like hairline, underneath the cheekbone, and then around the jawline. However, you want to be careful because depending on your face shape, that might not be what suits you. All right, so as I go through on this side, I'm going to do the traditional like 3 as we come through here. So most people know to sculpt around your hairline and under the jawline, and I'm using Bahama Mama from the Balm. This is a little bit of a deeper shade, but it'll really give you guys, like I'm doing it a little bit more dramatic just so you'll be able to see the difference. And down the neck a little bit. You should be going down the neck. Maybe I shouldn't have done that on this side. But a big key point is not every face shape is the same. So if you have a very small forehead, so you guys can see already because this side isn't contoured at all. If you have a very small forehead and you are contouring that on the outside, you are bringing that in even more. And so you're actually going to end up making your face look almost more like triangular because you just need to pull in the places that are too wide. So if you have a wider jaw or maybe you have a more square jaw, that's where you would take your contour even up a little bit onto, as opposed to underneath, you might take it up a little bit and onto your jawline. Now, if you have an oval face shape, then you just need a delicate little bit of everything. I think every person out there thinks that they have a round face shape, and that is not the case by any means. But when you do have a round face shape, you're looking to take in those corners to give you a more oval shape. So that's one thing that is big, is look at your face and really look at what you do need to pull in and what you don't need to be any shorter, any slimmer, because you don't need to be like tightening up and elongating more in areas that you don't need to be. So definitely be aware of how much you contour. So I don't really feel like I have a very big forehead. So I'm going to like over contour here just so you guys can kind of see. I would say I probably have about an average size forehead. I'm actually a little bit more almost like square, so I can bring a little bit of this up here to sort of like tuck this in and make that disappear a little bit. Now, the other thing with contouring is I see a lot of people bring their contour, first of all, they start it too low. So I'm gonna go a little bit lower on this side and they bring it in too far. So I really don't like to go and contour anything past the beginning of the eye, and even then, like that's like almost too much. So just this like little bit here, and I'll show you guys when I do the other side, but you can contour too much and either make yourself look more gaunt, which as we get older, we're wanting to keep some like healthy fullness to the face. Or this actually, because you're going so low, it actually drops your cheekbone down a little bit. If that shadow starts too low, then you almost like your cheekbone doesn't look as prominent. So you don't want to go too low with your contour and too far in. So I'm gonna like do a heavy amount here. Now on this other side, I'm just going to very lightly, I do like to have a little bit of a bronzed or contoured edge to my face, but just a little bit. Gotta blend these two together. All right, and then on this side, just chisel that out a little bit. Here, I'm just going to stay up fairly high on my cheekbone. So just under where the prominent part of that, like if you think of like where it rolls. So if you take your makeup brush and right where it starts to like dip when it rolls over that cheekbone, we're just gonna take that and blend it in. That's going to give you that more lifted look. I'm going to take a bit of a brush and just blend this out a little. So if you can see, like, I've got all of this darkness here. So all of this kind of looks like sunken a little bit. Whereas this, I just feel like I look a little bit perkier. My cheekbone pops out a little bit more right here as opposed to on this side. It all just kind of like, mwah, comes down. All right, so let's talk bronzer. So bronzing is meant to mimic natural sunlight on your face. So if we think about where the sun actually hits, it's going to hit our forehead. Think of any of the places that you actually get burned, and that would be where you'd bronze. So a lot of times that's going to be up on your forehead and your brow bone, higher up on your cheekbone, and maybe the bridge of the nose, the tip of the chin, right? So that's where you would naturally get some of that warmth. I think sometimes people just like bronze all over and go a little crazy. I'm just gonna do a tiny little bit just to show you guys. So on this side, I'm just gonna go kind of ham. I'm using the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer. So a lot of people kind of come in and they just like get their whole cheek. And again, what's gonna happen with this is you're ruddying up that area like even more. So if you are properly going to warm up your face, we would just take a little bit right through the temple area and maybe higher up on that cheekbone and a little bit on the chin and then a little bit on the nose, just because that would naturally be. So I don't know if you guys will be able to see this in the camera, but that bronzer that's on the top is really a little bit warmer than that contour that's underneath, because Bahama Mama is almost like a gray brown. I can even show you guys here. So just to show you guys, this is the Bahama Mama. As you can see, it's very well loved and used. This is more of almost like a browny gray, if you will, and then the Chocolate Soleil, and I think that this is just the regular, this is the medium deep. And that's going to have a little bit more warmth to it. It's still not like orangey, but it's definitely more of like a natural warmth. So if you guys can see, I personally think that this side looks a little patchier, and then this still has some nice warmth to it, but it's still has some, I would say, youthful pop to it. So the more you put these dark shades on, the more like recessed your face looks and you lose a little bit of your bone structure. So that is going to be bronzer and contour. I hope that that's a little bit helpful for you guys in placement. So blush placement is really kind of a personal preference. And again, it's one of those things that's going to depend on your face shape. But I would think that most of us are looking to have more lifted cheekbones, have a slim face, and just have an overall flattering look. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the Buxom Mykonos blush. And I'm just going to take this and apply it a little more in on my cheek and a little lower. And a lot of people do this like smile and pop it on the apple of their cheek. Which I'll be honest, the one person that, not that I like follow the royal family all that much, but Princess Kate wears blush on her apples of her cheeks and she can actually get away with it. But what happens is when you do this, and again, I'm applying a little bit heavy just so you guys can see the difference on both sides, but so when I stop smiling, my face moves down, right? Because here's our cheekbone, and now here's our cheekbone. And so what happens is this all again droops down and our face looks more tired, a little bit more aged, and it just isn't quite as flattering. So you definitely, I usually say you want 2 fingers away from your cheek. That's how far out you want to start, and usually you want to apply a little higher to the face. So I'm going to keep my face neutral and just tap a little bit of blush higher on the cheek. And again, just applying this a little bit more than average, just so you guys can really see the difference. I feel like maybe this light is a little brighter. I can't tell if it's the light or if it's the, oh, there we go. I can't tell if it's the light or if it's just the fact that I have so much dang contour on this side that it looks darker, but I think it might actually just be the contour. Okay, so if you guys can see there, and again, I'm just going to give these both a little bit of a blend. That's one thing that I like to have on hand, is a big fluffy brush to just be able to blend shades in together. So if you guys can see, on this side, I've got my blush probably almost 3 fingers, 2.5 fingers away, and lifted very high onto my cheekbone. So this is going to give me a little bit more like fresh awake look, whereas, you know, I mean, if I smile, I still have like nice popped out cheeks, but this one just drags down so much more. So standard rule is the higher on your cheekbone, it's going to give you a little bit more of a lifted look. Now, the one thing is, if you have a very gaunt face, or if you have a very elongated face, popping blush onto the center of your cheeks will actually make your face look a little bit more full, and that will actually flatter your face type a little bit more. So hopefully you guys can see the difference there with the blush. Now let's talk a little bit about highlighter. So when it comes down to highlighter, it's really more about the finish of what you put on and how much you put on. I would say, you know, highlight, because it has that reflective quality, is going to show texture more no matter what. So the minute you put something glowy onto your face, you're going to see more pores, more wrinkles, more scarring. And I know this because when I was younger, I had pretty bad acne, and so I have some scarring and pitting and enlarged pores, especially like right through here. So if you aren't wanting to showcase that, or if you have troubled areas, you want to keep a less luminous highlight. That doesn't mean you can't highlight, you just want something that's less metallic. And I find that anytime I get a little carried away and get my highlight in too far, I'm not as pleased as when I keep it a little further out. So I'm going to grab a couple highlighters and show you guys what I mean. I'm going to use good old Mary Luminizer. This is a really nice pearlescent highlight, and it can get very luminous. So on this side, woo, yeah, okay. So on this side, I'm going to bring this in a little bit down onto my cheek. And obviously I'm using quite a bit here. So the minute I do that, I can see texture. And once I get the other side on, I'll zoom in again so you guys can see this. I can immediately see my pores, any bumps that I have for my acne scars. Okay, so the lighting in here right now might look a little different. I took a little break. We went out to lunch, and yes, I did go out to lunch with 2 very different sides of my face, but I think this lighting is actually gonna show you guys a little bit better the texture that came up on that highlight. I'm gonna zoom you guys in here so you can see, like I said, I have some scarring from and enlarged pores from younger when I had skin issues. So you can see that this highlighter, when you put a lot on, or when you use something that's really reflective, how much that really shows. So on this side, we're going to use, and this is just a little mini size, but this is the Laura Mercier Matte Radiance Baked Powder. And this is really going to be a very beautiful, subtle highlight when you want a little bit of glow, but you don't want something that's really going to emphasize any texture. And so the other thing that I'm going to do, because I know just looking from my skin is, like I said, right here, I have some quite enlarged pores and a little bit more texture on my face, so I want to make sure to avoid that area. So you can see here I brought it down much further. I'm just going to keep it higher up on the cheek. If you guys hear little puppy paws, our fur baby is just outside the door. I can hear her pacing. So that still gives a beautiful radiance, but it's a little more subtle than this side, and it does not show the texture nearly as much. Like in person, I can see every little pore, every little fleck, and on this side, it just looks nice and glowy, and you know, definitely doesn't emphasize as much. So if you guys can see that there. So that's really a big difference. And you can still, I mean, this is the same for anywhere else on your face you're going to highlight. If you're going to highlight your nose, which I don't really do a lot, but we can put a little bit down the center. If you're going to highlight above your lip, you know, if you have any fine lines or anything like that, that highlighter, the more reflective it is, the more you'll be able to see that. So you definitely want to go with something a little bit more subtle. You can see that this side looks much more lifted. You still have some nice color, you have some nice reflective quality to the skin, and this definitely is brought down a little bit more. And I think that between the, you know, the wrong matching shade and bringing the contour in too far and over bronzing, that really makes a big difference. So hopefully getting moved in a little bit gave you a really noticeable difference as far as what the face and what the skin really looks like. I think because this video is probably going to be pretty lengthy, just knowing how I've been recording so far, and I really want to give you guys, you know, value and education on my channel. I think that, you know, I love talking about the new products and everything that's out there and, you know, doing reviews, but I really hope that when you guys are watching my videos, you get little tidbits of info that maybe helps you when you're doing your makeup applications at home. So I think my videos tend to get a little lengthy, so I'll probably split this to skin, and then we'll do eyes and lips in the next portion of the video. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. For those of you that are joining for the first time, hey, so great to have you on my channel, and please consider subscribing. I really appreciate all the support. Thank you to all of you guys who've left comments on my videos. It really does help my channel. I hope that you did find this video either entertaining or found some value in it, and I will see you guys really soon.